I'm still with me as well. Delighted to be joined now by Paul Johnson. Once again, he's the former director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Right, we're talking today actually about what your old organisation, the IFS, have announced in terms of basically where we are in terms of what's likely to happen in the budget. It's just 6 weeks away right now. In fact, just less than 6 weeks. How bad is it going to be?
Well, that's very much in the hands of the Office of Budget Responsibility. And we don't know. We really don't know what they're going to say. I mean, we do know some things, though. We know that the government's backpedaled on its welfare changes. That's going to cost them about £6 billion. And we know that interest rates are higher than was expected. That's another £5 billion. So we know we've got at least 10 or 11 billion of a, quote, black hole to fill. And it seems much more likely than not that the OBR will say, but we got our growth forecast wrong last time. We were too optimistic. Actually, we think things are going to go less well over the next few years. And that's going to be another, my former colleagues reckon, another 10 billion. So that's at least a 20 billion tax rise in the budget. And if that's right, and that's at the lower end of expectations, I have to say.
Well, I was going to say, we've been hearing 40 billion or even
indeed.
More than that.
Indeed, that is at the lower end of expectations. But what my former colleagues also said, which I think is right, is that that's almost certainly not going to be enough, because that would be just enough to give the Chancellor back her tiny amount of so-called headroom against her fiscal rules. And if she does that, then we're going to have the same awful speculation next year when we come up to the budget and, oh gosh, the forecast might have got worse, we might have to raise taxes again. So I think that she's almost certainly going to come for probably another 40 billion of tax rises like she did a year ago.
Which is a huge sum of money. And crucially also, she said a year ago, the Prime Minister said, we found this awful black hole. We're gonna deal with it now. But this is it. We're gonna take the pain now. And I think even Labour backbenchers was like, well, okay, we can get away with it once, but you're going to get away with it another year. I mean, and you mentioned the fiscal rules. This issue, you can't borrow for day-to-day spending. But the reality is she hasn't got a choice about her fiscal rules. She can't afford to borrow anymore. We're already paying, 110 billion a year just on the interest, servicing the debt we've already got. There's no way she can borrow more. But we know an awful lot of people are worrying about where those tax rises are going to come, because it's very difficult to raise that amount of money in taxes. And she's already been shown she can't do major welfare cuts, which is another huge area of spending that needs cutting, which could help balance the books. Labour backbenchers won't allow that, even 5 billion of it. And that was nothing. That was money down the back of the sofa. So where is she going to get this money from when they've got these manifesto pledges not to raise the taxes that hit all of us, the income tax, the VAT and national insurance on working people?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Taking all of that in turn, I think you're absolutely right. She can't borrow more. We're already paying more in debt interest than almost any other country. And as you say, it's well over 100 billion a year. Spending cuts. And it's interesting, there was a hint. I mean, there's not some Kremlinology here in terms of working out what's being said. There was a hint in what the Chancellor said this morning, but maybe she's thinking of spending, though it's very hard to know where she'd go, given that she's struggling to do anything on welfare, and we've already had the spending review. So maybe there'll be something on spending, but I'm sure the big part of it will be on taxes. And again, we've had some, looking at the details, reading between the lines of what's been said. I mean, there was some hint a week or two ago, wasn't there, that the manifesto commitments stand for now, which suggests that maybe I'm sure they've been thinking about whether they'll change them. And then the Chancellor this morning sort of yet again saying, oh, we'll come after the rich or the wealthy.
Wealth tax is part of the story. Yeah, part of it. But this is the thing, and we talked about this a little bit earlier as well, that, it's very easy for a lot of people. Again, Jeremy Corbyn, his entire, shtick in 2017 and 2019 in his manifestos was, we're going to have loads more spending on everything and we're just going to tax those people over there. The trouble is, there aren't enough of those people over there, those rich people. And also, crucially, the ones that are very, very rich, who'd be taxed a lot, tend to leave if you tax them too much. Then you have
I think that's exactly right. I mean, it is worth remembering, and this is something that neither party want to tell you, that the last government really very, very significantly increased taxes on high-income people. Yeah. And they were very, quite socialist, quite honestly, in the way that they did that. I think if we do want 40 billion, I think it's almost impossible to see that you get 40 billion without, I'm afraid, hitting people ordinary incomes without doing something with income tax, national insurance, or VAT. And I think if you try to get 40 billion through fiddling around with capital gains tax and inheritance tax and council tax and all these other smaller taxes, you are going to make a right mess of the tax system, an even bigger mess than you've got at the moment. You come after the pension saving, which we want more saving, we need investment in the economy. You come after that. That's going to be incredibly complicated. But I'm sure the Chancellor's thinking about it because there's lots of money in pensions. You certainly can't get it through a wealth tax. That's never worked anywhere ever. So if she's looking at that kind of number, she's going to really struggle to do that without coming after ordinary people, I'm afraid.
And that's it. And people already, as we've seen latest figures, in terms of our lowest growth in standard of living for people, we've seen GDP, looks quite good when you look at GDP in G7 countries, but until you do it per capita, per head of the population, well, after you import 2.5 million new people, funnily enough, we're at the bottom of that ladder, not near the top. And the reality is people know when they're poorer. They know they're not better off. They know if they get a pay rise, it's eaten up straight away in inflation, and a lot of the taxes they're looking at, anything on business, that's just going to be passed on to the consumer, which is working people.
Well, we know that, and actually, the reason that the Chancellor went for this big hike in employer national insurance last year was the sense that people wouldn't notice it so much. But actually, we know that it showed up in inflation. That's actually one of the things that's pushed through into higher prices and lower growth this year. So in the end, if you put tax on business, if someone has to pay it, and in the end, it's usually the employees or the consumers who end up paying it. And that's exactly what we've seen this time around. So you can sort of hide it, but you can't hide, as you say, from people that it's not just over the last couple of years, it's over the last 15 years. We've barely got any better off. And I think that underlies a lot of the people's fed upness with politics, because for the first time, in at least half a century, and probably in a century, for the first time in a century, you've gone a long, long period of time without people feeling any better off, and that makes them really pretty fed up.
And we're seeing that across Europe. We're seeing that in America as well, and that is the thing. People are paying higher and higher taxes, and they don't feel they're getting anything for it. Paul Johnson, great to hear from you. Always appreciate that. Former director of the IFS there. Philip Ingram. Who would want to be in Rachel Reeves' shoes? Her ugly shoes right now, but she got herself into this mess, and this is the trouble of having people in charge of the economy who don't understand how an economy runs and have never run a business.
Exactly, and she kept going on about how she inherited a 22 billion black hole. It seems to have increased to 40 billion in her watch. It took the Tories 14 years to get 22. She's done another 18 billion on top of that in less than 18 months.
Just don't add up.
They don't add up, and it shows a level of incompetence.
She can't borrow anymore. You can't just keep taxing and taxing and taxing and then having spending going.
Exactly.
That said, British taxpayer, British voters need to be honest with ourselves. You cannot keep expecting to have all this money just thrown out on everything.
We need to
and not pay the taxes. We are going to need epic levels of cutting to get ourselves back on the straight and narrow. I'd love to hear your